All right, y'all, I'm a little late, but not too late. It's still going on. They're dropping videos about the whole David thing damn near every hour. So today we're going to watch David apologize for Holmes' bad smell. Weeks after alleged dismemberment report. I think I said that word right, dismemberment.
Updates for you in the case of David, the singer accused of murdering 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Her father speaks out about their purported relationship, more questions about this Santa Barbara trip, cell phone evidence, and was David caught on camera apologizing for the smell of a dead body? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime.
Oh, is he on a stream? Did he do that on a stream? And someone called out the smell?
For the smell of a dead body? Welcome to Sidebar,
What's
presented
up,
by
Rebecca?
Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so we have more on the latest in the criminal case against David. 21-year-old singer David Anthony Burke, who is currently charged with first-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains out in Los Angeles. This is all in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez,
He's
who,
21?
as we know, was found dead, dismembered, decomposed, reportedly found in David's Tesla at a Hollywood tow yard back on September 8th of last year. He has entered a not guilty plea. Always important to remember that he is innocent until proven guilty, and I've been saying that for the past, week, 2 weeks, because the allegations against him are not only so serious, but also potentially so damning. I mean, the evidence, we've gone through at least 2 episodes where we've broken down what the purported evidence is from prosecutors against him. So what I want to get into today are some updates from the alleged Santa Barbara trip to cell phone evidence to a statement from Celeste's father. A lot more information I want to get into. And to just put it into context, and again, I'm not going to repeat it all here. I did previous sidebars on all this. You can check it out on Law and Crime's YouTube page, where I laid out all the potential evidence that prosecutors claim they have against David. But basically speaking, we are talking reportedly forensic, digital, testimonial, surveillance evidence. And essentially, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office claims that David...
Why are they taking so long to put like everything out though? Like I keep hearing different videos saying there's this, and that. Like why don't they just release everything at once?
Was in an illegal sexual relationship with this 14-year-old girl, that it happened ever since she was 13, that she threatened to expose him, would destroy his career, invites her over to his place in LA, gets her a ride share there, all the way from Lake Elsinore, allegedly quickly kills her once she arrives. Remember, multiple penetrating injuries. That's according to the forensic report, right, the ME's office. And then reportedly proceeds to sloppily dispose of her body by allegedly dismembering her and buying items online to help with the disposal. Prosecutors have referenced a shovel, chainsaws, body bag, laundry bags, a blue inflatable pool, that he allegedly made these purchases under a fake name, Victoria Mendez. Brutal crime. Brutal, brutal crime. All right. Now, when I say updates, I want to turn to a lot of these, and I'm not going to do it alone. I want to bring on somebody we haven't had in quite some time. Actually, I don't think we've had him on since David was arrested and charged and all of this potential evidence has been revealed. Retired Detective Matt Irvine joins us. Matt, good to see you. You and I had been breaking down this case for a while before David's arrest. So, but even before I go into the updates, I just am curious, 2 questions for you. A, what do you think of all the evidence, generally speaking, that investigators have been able to collect in this case so far, as laid out in the prosecution's brief? And B, this is an interesting part because I heard Harvey Levin from TMZ talk about it last week, that he says it's almost unusual at this point in the case that prosecutors are in fact laying out a lot of what they have, or almost everything that they have, in this preliminary hearing brief. So 2 parts. A, what do you think of the investigative work, the potential evidence? And B, is it unusual at this point in the case that authorities are revealing what they have?
First of all, yeah, Jesse, thank you for having me back on to discuss these really important and tragic updates in this case. First of all, to your first question, I think the investigation that's been laid out so far has been thorough. It's been outstanding. The breadth and depth of investigation and evidence that's been hinted at so far by the LA District Attorney's Office is truly impressive. And I really have to hand it to LAPD and the DA's office for being willing to stand in silence and take the blows that they've been taking over these last 6 or 7 months, with all the folks saying, what are they doing or why aren't they doing anything? And it was very clear that they weren't able to talk about what they were doing, but they've clearly been doing a lot, and probably from the moment that Celeste's body was discovered in the Tesla. As to your second question, it is unusual to have this much evidence laid out by the prosecution this early in the case. A preliminary hearing is really just that. It's a bare bones showing of the evidence by the prosecution, simply to convince a judge that there is probable cause, which is a fairly low standard, to proceed with the prosecution. So they are definitely front-loading their evidence in this case.
And the preliminary hearing is scheduled now for the end of the month. It was supposed to be last week. And to me, my cynical version of this is there's been a lot of criticism, a lot of commentary, and a lot of spotlight put on authorities in this case about how thorough the investigation is, how accurate the investigation is there a disagreement between the Los Angeles PD and the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. So to see this potential breadth of evidence, how much they have, in my opinion, I wonder if it's a sign to the public, let us do our jobs, look what we have, look at the case that we're building. All right, real quick, before we go any further, for all you cat owners out there, who doesn't want their cat to be healthy and happy, right? That's the most important thing. Feeding them smalls, that's the key. Why do I say that? Look, most cat food out there is made with cheap fillers and
I was like, what does the cat have to do with the case?
Meat byproduct that you would face in their fresh flavor craving. I want to talk free, and there's despite no anticipation. Sidebars really was illuminated a lot in the prosecution's brief that was filed in anticipation of this preliminary hearing. I'm going to talk about why I'm mentioning this again. There's an update to it. So just going from the brief to provide some context, it says, despite knowing she was dead and her family was trying to find her, the evidence will show defendant lied and claimed he didn't know where she was. In fact, defendant drove to Santa Barbara County immediately after the victim died, attempting to dispose of her property and destroy evidence. At approximately 11:30 p.m. on April 23, 2025, he drove away from his home as he texted and called the victim's phone asking where she was. Again, these were acts calculated and planned to set up his defense within a very short timeline.
Wait, he drove away from his home. He texted and called her 15 minutes after I'm only hearing about this now.
The prosecution can establish that.
Last April?
Bad because if he's going to claim he had nothing to do with it, and he had this whatever connection to her whatsoever, even at the very least a friendship, prosecutors are saying it was an illegal sexual relationship, never tries to contact her again after she goes missing. So again, that's an important allegation. Then it says, on May 8, 2025, defendant returned to the same area in Santa Barbara County, leaving his home at around 11:30 p.m. He returned to the area again on May 31st, 2025. This is an isolated site off SR 154 where the victim's identification was subsequently discovered in January 2026. Additionally, on July 7th, 2025, defendant ordered and subsequently Amazon delivered a burn cage to his home under the same fake name as part of his plan to incinerate evidence. Defendant's cellular activity and communications derived from defendant's iPhone and Tesla, which demonstrate defendant's activity.
Can you imagine how stressed the nigga was through all this, bro? Like, I don't know how you do something so crazy and then just like even when he had to text 15 minutes after he had the body, it's like, I know every second just feels like an hour, bro. That's fucked.
From April 22nd, 2025 to April 24th, 2025, including a trip to Santa Barbara County in the middle of the night after the victim arrived at his Hollywood Hills home. Why am I talking about that? What's the update? Steve Fisher. We've had him on the program multiple times. I've had him on Jesse Weber Live on News Nation. He's the private investigator who was hired by the owner of the property where David was staying that was allegedly near where the Tesla was found. He was tasked with looking into this. He's currently on another search right now, by the way. But he took to X, and he also added some new aerial photos. And he said in his post, quote, on Friday, May 1st, I spent the day in Santa Barbara County off SR 154 in the area where Celeste's passport card was found by a Caltrans worker. I captured high-resolution drone imagery of the area. Once I finish my current search mission in the Grand Canyon, I will process the imagery through the detection analysis programs we use. The area is covered by license plate readers. The specific area where he appears to have pulled off SR-154 has a gate that is closed from sunset to sunrise, so his car would likely have had to stay relatively close to SR-154.
You see what yeah, and I'm never really invested in stuff, but the David stuff, whoa.
There are trails that lead down to the water.
And it's like, yo, he had motion too. It's like, why are we going for the 13-year-olds? Not we. Him.
Someone could dispose of a chainsaw or other evidence there. Given how small and weak David is, I do not believe a chainsaw or other heavy evidence would be far into the water. The water is clear, and I was able to see several feet into it with the drone. I have a couple thousand high-resolution images from the area to process. I have attached a few low-resolution preview images to give an idea of the terrain. Hashtag Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Hashtag David. Before I go any further, Matt, you tell me what you take away from that.
Well, the first thing you talked about, his activities in the immediate aftermath of Celeste's killing, I think are really telling, because I think they defeat any argument that this was an accident, an overdose, or even some crime of passion. It really speaks to what the prosecution is alleging in their special circumstance allegation of lying in wait, which is that he lured her to his home with the intention to kill her. And the reason I say that is an accident, a crime of passion, it would be hard to imagine that somebody would have the presence of mind in the minutes afterwards to essentially stage an alibi for themselves by sending multiple texts to a person that they just killed. And then to then immediately, within minutes or hours of her death, drive all the way to Santa Barbara County to dispose of some kind of evidence. Again, speaks to this being a premeditated crime and not an accident or a crime of passion. He was just too busy, too calculating, too quickly after her death for this to be anything other than a premeditated homicide. As to the multiple trips, and I think that also ties in with the multiple online orders that we're seeing evidence of. It seems like in the days and weeks following her killing, he engaged in a lot of activity to try to cover up what he did and to dispose of Celeste in a way that would make it harder for this child's remains to be found or identified.
I'm glad you made that point. I talked about this on a previous sidebar, and by the way, Harvey Levin talked about it too in his own analysis, that like, look, there's no witness testimony as far as we can tell. There's no surveillance footage of the actual alleged killing. So what happened behind closed doors? And could that be room for reasonable doubt? I've seen cases before where somebody is acquitted of a murder, but actually convicted of the disposal of the body. So it's two separate things. But the fact that the timing of this is key, either, let's say, there was some sort of altercation, something happened in the house, whatever it is, that it wasn't a premeditated murder, she dies, and then either you just think so quickly
Alex
about
with
how
the
to
sub.
do all
Why did the
this,
sound go off?
Or it's, like you said, the
W
evidence
sub,
may suggest
Alex.
this was planned. There was thinking going into
What's
this.
good?
Although it is interesting, Matt, to think about why not purchase everything beforehand? The bags, the inflatable pool.
He didn't purchase everything beforehand because he didn't know what the hell he was doing, bro. Wait, so what I'm understanding is he was stressed because she was going to expose what they had going on? Age difference and all that? So he just got rid of her? That's what I'm saying. Like, he casually bought it. Like, he did it and then just snitched on himself. It's like, ordered a body bag. The only thing that he did that was, like, smart was change the name of the delivery order. Something Hernandez or whatever. Body bag. Shovel. Like, just to his address. Fake name, but to his address. Chat, I'm watching like one crime video and like one more video, and if you guys are up, we can all run forward, like to whoever. At the Discord for whoever's not here. But this is for the reactions channel.
The chainsaw. Why did that all come afterwards?
Well, again, there's a lot that we don't know yet, but I think the timing is critical in terms of, and correct me if my dates are a little bit off, but as I recall, the text exchanges in which she essentially threatened to expose him came within something like
that's true
48 hours of her last visit to his home and her killing. So I think it's quite.
How old were they when they met? Anybody know?
quite possible that the decision to kill her came in response to those threats to expose him, those threats to his career.
He was
and
an
that's
ugly
again
nigga. He was
why
a
the
handsome nigga.
LADA's office has put the special circumstance allegation that this was done to kill a witness and for financial gain. The financial gain in this case being his career. And frankly, have not seen these allegations used in this way. Usually murder for financial gain, we think about, murder for hire or hitman, killing of a witness. We think about it in terms of
oh yeah, that nigga sold his soul after the money.
Organized crime and gang cases where a person is already named as a witness in a case that's already ongoing.
They met on Fortnite?
Case, the specifics are a little bit different, but the theory, I think, holds.
And lying in wait, right? So these special circumstances allegations basically get you a higher penalty if he's convicted of murder. You're talking life in prison without the possibility of parole, possibly the death penalty, although there is a moratorium on execution.
What? Am I slow? Has that been a thing? I thought that wasn't a thing anymore. Yo, you murder someone, you get a death penalty?
California. Going back to how they might be...
it depends on the state, huh? Let me re-listen.
Get you a higher penalty if he's convicted of murder. You're talking life in prison without the possibility of parole, possibly the death penalty, although there is a moratorium on executions in California. Going back to how they might be able to track him to Santa Barbara, there is another post, and I talked about this a little bit, but there's another post by Steve, and this one is actually accompanied by video of him driving, and it says, one may wonder how David could be so dumb to leave his cell phone on all 3 times he came out to SR 154 in Santa Barbara, the same road Celeste's passport was found. Maybe he didn't bring the phone, but didn't think about the license plate reader. This goes to a question, how can they track him, Matt? And how accurate is that data? Is this something that can be questioned by defense attorneys?
You know what's crazy? Like, I've seen all this, like, information here. And it's like, from what I'm understanding, they can't say it's him unless, like, they, like, have video proof. It's like, because in my head, I'm like, why is this happening? Like, why is this so long? Obviously, he got stuff from Amazon. Like, you have 100 reasons why it's him. Why do we have to have, like, 1 million court dates and shit to prove this and that? But I guess you can't prove someone guilty until you have, like, every single thing. Because now it's like, if they have the passport, whatever that he was driving down, it's like, you can't really sit there and still say, like, he did the physical act of murdering somebody without, like, the fingerprints or something.
Successfully at trial, or in your experience, if you're talking about cell phone records, license plate readers, that becomes very, very difficult for defense attorneys to argue about the reliability, the accuracy.
Yeah, that's
of
crucial.
That
you need that.
It's pretty hard to argue with geolocation data, especially if you've got multiple sources of data.
Geolocation.
It's quite likely, because this is not a sophisticated offender, that he didn't think about leaving his phone behind. And if he brought his phone with him, that can be tracked very precisely. Even when the phone is off, there is usually some limited geolocation data available with most smartphones. That's how your Find My Phone app works, even if your phone's turned off or the battery's died. As to the traffic cameras, that's a very good source of evidence. It would be interesting to see who manages those traffic cameras.
Because this case was April 2025.
The big company typically only keeps that data for about 30 days, but they contract with different localities and law enforcement agencies, and so that can be extended.
Damn.
It would be unusual to me if that data was available 6 or so months later, which would be the earliest that an investigation could have started, because they didn't find poor Celeste until September. Traffic cameras are a possibility. I think more likely we're talking about geolocation data through the phone, and quite possibly through the Tesla as well.
Next up, timeline. So from when prosecutors claim she was killed on April 23rd to his arrest to the charging, it's about a year, right? So Steve posts this. This is, again, an update. Can't stop thinking about the timeline of the murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez as put forward in the pretrial brief. Could the 10:30 p.m. "Where are you?" text messages actually be real and not a staged alibi? Could Celeste have walked away after an argument upon arriving in the Uber? Maybe those texts from David asking where she was were real, and after he didn't receive a response, he went looking for her, found her, and they ended up driving to Santa Barbara County where the killing actually occurred. He could have shut her phone off when finding her. In that scenario, her body could have remained along SR 154 for the roughly 12 days until the pool, body bag, laundry bags, and chainsaws were ordered and delivered May 1st.
Body bag, laundry bags, and multiple chainsaws.
May 5th. It is also worth noting that the pool was ordered after her death, meaning it would not have contained blood
And then a pool bought after.
from the actual
There
killing.
was like no thought.
The DA's version of events is a very compressed timeline. Arrival at 10:10 p.m., a fatal stabbing, and then being composed enough to send an alibi text by 10:30 p.m. That is a 20-minute window. They also claim the trip to Santa Barbara that evening was to start disposing of evidence. However, the evidence had not even been purchased yet. The pool, chainsaw, shovel, and other items had not even been ordered at the time of the first Santa Barbara trip. There's also the question of storing a body at his manager Josh Marshall's rental house for 12 days while waiting for tools, with nearby neighbors and decomposition odors likely becoming noticeable within a few days, all while David was out of town and having to trust that nobody would enter a house that wasn't even leased to him. None of this changes the central point that David is responsible. He killed Celeste. That I am certain of. Like I said, the DA is likely correct in their theory. They're working with all the evidence. Hashtag David, hashtag Celeste.
Nah, apparently the parents knew about everything that was going on between David and Celeste. Yabo, what's good, bro?
Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Again, that is Steve's perspective, Steve's opinion on it. But he does raise interesting questions there, right?
Yeah, and again, it's certainly possible. I did read that, and I think Steve's theory or alternate theory, has some merit. His statement about the compressed timeline, I think, is less salient if you decide that David had made up his mind to kill Celeste at the time that he lured her to his home. I think if he'd already made up his mind in the days or hours prior to inviting her over, the fact that he staged the phone calls and made the trip to Santa Barbara so quickly thereafter makes more sense. Steve's right that a lot of the evidence in this case had not yet come into David's possession, but there would have been Celeste's passport card, it could have involved her phone, and it could have been a trip to dispose of the murder weapon. So all of those items would be things that David might want to get rid of as soon as possible. As to the idea that she was killed out in Santa Barbara, that's certainly possible. I would be wondering about evidence of a struggle or blood inside.
I've been wondering where Santa Barbara is this whole time.
The Tesla.
You saw he paid one of the kids from her school 1K to give her a phone to talk to him because her parents took it? Oh, he was sneaky like that? He was just paying people to get his way? What the fuck? Am I bugging?
If I came from the purple, I appreciate y'all so motherfucking much. We about to get this shit back going, man.
What the fuck is this? I'm being haunted? Oh, that was a stream that Carrie was... I was so confused. That was Zalo.
That would require David then, after killing her in
I don't know.
Santa Barbara, to put her body in his car and drive it 100 or so miles back to Los Angeles, which would be a very risky thing for him to do, whether he did it immediately afterwards or 2 weeks later. So possible, yes, but as Steve said, the LADA and the LAPD are the ones who are working with all the evidence, and they seem to believe that the evidence shows she was lured to his home to be murdered there.
And risky, I mean, it's also risky allegedly
Where's Santa Barbara?
Somebody in this house that he was leasing, right? So it does become a question too. Here's another update that I want to talk about, another aspect. So prior investigation and movements. So this court paperwork, this brief, reveals that investigators had apparently been looking into David for quite some time. Not about...
He looks different in every picture.
About this apparent relationship. Remember, he is charged with having an illegal sexual relationship. So... the filing says detectives learned the victim had been reported missing to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department by her family, who live in Lake Elsinore, in February and April 2024. RSSD telephonically contacted defendant on February 17, 2024, and after they identified a phone number in the victim's phone records that belonged to him. During the call, defendant claimed he had spoken to the victim last on February 13th or 14th, 2024, but stated he was unaware she was a minor or that she had been reported missing. RCSD advised him that Los Angeles Sheriff's Department deputies would be coming to his home. On that day, defendant was living at 804 North Doheny Place in West Hollywood. RCSD requested that LASD conduct a welfare check at defendant's home. LASD deputies went to defendant's home that night at 8:15 p.m. and informed him the victim was a 13-year-old runaway. Defendant again claimed he was unaware she was a minor and he had only met the victim once.
Yo, all this evidence is mad work. Like, why can't we just put the nigga on a lie detector test? That's what AMP does. Like, that's where you get the real answers.
In person in November 2023. However, defendant showed deputies a yearbook photo of the
One
victim
test
he
is
had
over.
on his
Lock him
cell
up.
phone. Although he claimed to be unaware of where the victim was at the time, she returned home 2 days later. Despite being informed by law enforcement the victim was only 13, defendant continued to pursue her. After the victim returned home in February 2024, her parents took her cell phone away. Defendant drove to Lake Elsinore and paid a junior high school student in the victim's class $1,000 to give the victim a cell phone defendant purchased so they could stay in contact. Throughout 2024, the victim spent a significant amount of time with defendant, including summer weekends at his home in the Hollywood Hills and traveling with him to Las Vegas, London, and Texas to meet his family. I say all that. Here are the updates. Steve, back to Steve, posts this. Minors such as Celeste Rivas Hernandez cannot just travel to London without consent. Here are the laws in the UK about minors traveling with an adult that is not their parent. U.S. citizens do need an ETA visa to travel
Estimate time of
to
arrival.
or through the UK. You'll need to show that your parent or guardian consents to your travel and accommodation arrangements. If you do have to apply for a standard visitor visa, you'll need to identify the adult traveling with you in your visa application. If the person you're traveling with is not your parent, you'll need to provide specific information about them in your application. You can identify up to 2 adults.
Well, you're saying the parents are just as bad and they should have some type of consequence? If so, how bad of a consequence? Lock them up for allowing their daughter to be with a grown man?
In your visa application. Their names will appear on your visa.
Do what to
the
them?
adult can apply for a visa at the same time, but you must each complete separate applications. Matt, over to you. I don't know the specifics of this. I don't know if you know differently, but he does raise questions
Child
about
neglect?
how she would be able to travel with David and who knew what.
And there's a lot that we still don't know and that may still be unknown to the investigation as well. The kind of subtext of this that concerns me, and I saw other comments about whether or not David provided money to Celeste's family. For a child sex predator to ingratiate himself with the families of their victims, it's not unusual. It's part of the MO. And that doesn't put blame on the families. The only person to blame for what happened to Celeste, both her sexual abuse and her murder, is David Burke, at least as far as the evidence shows at this point. So what the family knew, what the family did, tried to do, was unable to do to stop this relationship with David, there's a lot that we don't know there.
Well, can I just jump in because this is part of the other update? Celeste's father spoke out. We know the family has been relatively silent during this whole
he
process,
spoke?
understandably so. But this was reported by TMZ that Celeste's father, Jesus Rivas, through the family attorney, Patrick Steinfeld, said, quote, "I never had any contact with this guy and we haven't received any money from him or anyone in his family." Now, on my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, I spoke to Lauren Conlin, a columnist for Los Angeles Magazine. She's been looking into this case. She said these rumors about the money came from posts on Reddit that originated from Celeste's hometown of Lake Elsinore. And she added on my show, this family is going through something so horrific and so tragic that no family should have to go through. We're living in this crazy society where we blame the victim's family. And at this point, we just don't know enough. Matt, back to you. People will still look at this and say,
We do
how's
know
it
that
possible
she needed permission to
that
travel,
the family never
and
met
her
him, or didn't
parents
know him, or he
signed
didn't
it.
know him. Back to you.
Again, it would be absolutely normal and natural for a predator to ingratiate himself with the family of his victim. We don't know how or to what degree this happened in this case, but that puts blame on the predator and not on the family. David was a very powerful, glamorous, wealthy, successful artist. This is a family that by all accounts was struggling to get by in a kind of remote, distant, dusty corner of Southern California. The power dynamic there is overwhelming. The power over a child as young as 11 when this relationship started, and the power over a family of limited means trying to compete with this glamorous, successful, wealthy guy. Clearly, they took the phone away from her because there was something they objected to, something they were trying to keep from happening. He traveled 70 miles and gave $1,000 to a middle school kid to get her another phone. Whatever they
He looked
tried
old for
to
21 years old.
forbid, whether it was, judging, grounding, whatever they tried to do, the evidence is that Celeste responded by
just
running
turned
away.
21.
And again, that's not casting any blame on Celeste either.
Poor
She
girl.
was a child, and her parents are victims in this too. And they've suffered a unspeakable loss at the hands, apparently, of somebody truly
that's
ghoulish.
crazy.
And we need to be careful
Young
as we
20.
talk about this that we don't start becoming ghouls ourselves. She is a
Very well
victim,
said.
her parents are victims, and the only person to blame that we know of so far for the death of this child is David Burke.
And I'm glad you mentioned that.
I wonder if
And
other
just
people were
something else
involved.
I'll add to this. Couple things. One,
Because he
it's
had to
impossible
have
to know
gotten
what his family
help from someone.
is going through. I mean, it's one thing to have to go through this whole year of uncertainty, and then to find out the details of what happened to Celeste is unthinkable. Number two, and goes to the defense, if there was evidence that David was paying the family to keep them quiet about the relationship,
of course. Knew,
or
yeah.
anything like
But
that,
helped, I
if
wonder.
they're trying to prove this sexual relationship, if they're trying to prove that he wanted to keep it quiet, I have to imagine that would have made its way into the evidence so far. I have to imagine.
Like, I wonder who he was on the phone with him and like, yo, like, I'm about to go do it. Like who was around him to, like, not stop him, you know?
Imagine that would have made its way into the brief. We haven't seen that. So I think that should be an important consideration for anyone out there who is casting some sort of blame or some sort of spotlight on the family. Just keep that in mind as we go into
Thank you for saying
Because they're
that.
just
That's
as
absolutely
bad.
right.
Yeah, and I think
ones
the
that knew.
father coming out and saying that at this point in time, understandable, has to address it. Okay, before I let you go, this is a big one. So the filing states, and there's been a lot of talk about whether or not David had help. Is anybody else responsible? How could he do this on his own if the allegations are true? And he's innocent until proven guilty. The filing states that David lied to friends, business associates, and others about the strong smell of decay in and around the home and the car. TMZ published this video, reportedly from a July 4th, 2025 live stream, so a few months after the alleged murder. Oh, and by the way, according to the prosecution's brief, it was only a few weeks later, July 29th, quote, surveillance video and other evidence confirmed defendant was the last person to drive the vehicle on July 29, 2025.
That's crazy that they got a stream clip.
Before he left Los Angeles on a concert tour, so that's a very important date. That in this clip, David appears to be with Neil Langston. We've talked about him before, reportedly arrested in Montana to appear in a court hearing connected to the case, possibly grand
Wow.
jury, although he's not been charged directly in
Could he
connection
smell
with
something?
Celeste's death. And Sukana, so apparently he's friends. And in the video, in the house, he apologizes for the, quote, the way his bathroom smells. And he claims it was because he went to the bathroom a couple hours earlier. Now, that is a significant video in my mind. I don't know. Is that going to be a potential piece of evidence? Is it connected to these allegations? You tell me, Matt.
I'm not sure whether anybody
Oh,
assisted David in any part of the murder or the cover-up of that murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. I think it's almost unimaginable that there weren't people that were aware that he was having a sexual relationship with this child in the year and a half leading up to her murder. She looked like a child. He traveled extensively with her. It's hard to imagine that people didn't know that that was going on. As to the killing itself or its cover-up, I think that has yet to be seen. I don't know what the evidence will show. I'm sure that LAPD did extensive interviews of his circle of friends and associates in the investigation of this case. And I think it's quite likely that when this case moves forward, we will learn of those statements. And there may be persons who cooperated
yeah, he looked 30. How that nigga 20 years old?
with law enforcement in order to avoid criminal liability themselves.
I just think him on tape talking about a smell at that given time frame in that area, I mean, it could be because of the bathroom or it could be because it's, based on the prosecutor's allegation.
Nah, but something like that's not enough to use it in court, though. Bathroom smells bad. Could be anything. Not enough proof of anything.
About Celeste. I don't know, just chilling video to say the least. Matt Irvine, thank you so much for taking the time to break down these updates with me. I really
Matt
appreciate it.
Irvine.
Thank you, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your
Thank you.
podcasts. You can also check
Just
us out on
Weber.
NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my
That boy's on X and Instagram. That boy freaky on X.
News Nation show, Jesse Weber.
That boy on the X. And we like that. Damn, David. I wonder how long this court case gonna go. They just driving shit every day. They're not getting nowhere. Like, AMP's been posting a lot.